Be honest, how many of you guys saw this new servant, saw that her name was Kurohime, and thought it was some new Kiyohime unit that we were getting? Look, it's alright to go ahead and admit it. Only 75% of the people in the comment section will judge you. But we're talking about the new Kurohime unit that dropped over on the JP side of things. And I'm not gonna lie, I really like this servant. I think they're very well built. They're a little bit of a gimmicky servant, but it's not so gimmicky that you can't get the job done with them. They also have a little bit of technical support already in the game with someone like George existing, so they're kind of interesting. So you have Bisquion, who's kind of just the traditional good servant, a little unfortunate because we have a lot of really good single target quick servants that have already released, but still a really strong servant nonetheless. And then if you summon on the banner, you get this really cool, kind of, I don't want to say unique, but little niche unit over here with Kurohime. So we're going to break her down in today's video, going over her stat skills and just telling you whether or not she's worth building or pulling for. And if you're on the NA side of things, this is just 2 years left to prepare for this servant to come out. But as per usual, if you enjoy daily FGO content, make sure you drop a like on the video and maybe even subscribe to the channel, as I do be uploading these videos every single day, and we'll make sure that you are well informed on all things going on both the NA and JP side of things. But with all that being said, let's start diving right into her kit, starting off with her hits. Of which I'll go ahead and just say right off the bat, she is a single target art servant, so that does kind of give a little bit of context to her kit, where I like it a lot. I love art servants that are rocking the double arts double quick, especially when they have a little bit of a crit niche. Having some decent quick cards at 4 hits a pop with 10% star gen ain't too bad. It's going to help her drop a little bit of extra stars when it comes to those brave chains. And then the arts cards themselves are actually pretty decent at 3 hits a pop with 0.7% NP gain, meaning that she's going to have some pretty decent natural refund, and whenever you get crits on those arts cards, you'll be getting a fat refund back. They also decided to go ahead and give her the 5-hit extra attack, which if you didn't know is a composite card that gens stars NP and deals big boy damage. If you want to take it to omnipotent god status, you can invest in the append skill to give it that little bit of extra efficiency, barring that you pull enough of her to get the coins. But if you're summoning for this servant, you're probably going to go for additional copies. As far as passive skills are concerned, there's really nothing too notable to mention with her. I mean, she's got the magic resistance and the riding, so, I mean, her quick cards are a little bit more powerful, and she's got a little bit of debuff resistance to whiff those debuffs. I mean, I guess that's nice. She is arts though, so you have Castoria running around with the debuff cleanse on her NP that you're spamming every other turn, but hey, it's a nice sentiment nonetheless. But let's start moving into some of her skills, because you will almost immediately see what the gimmick with this servant is going to be. Starting off with skill 1, Protection from the Mountain God B. It gives her double dodge for 3 turns. She drops 15 stars every turn for 3 turns, and increases her own NP damage by 30% for 3 turns, while also increasing the NP damage of Serpent/Lamia, depending on the translation, and dragon allies except herself by 30% for 3 turns on a 6-turn cooldown. So immediately you can see they're trying to make her a pseudo dragon support buffer, but there's not quite enough dragon allies in the game to really make it worthwhile, so they added in Lamia/Serpent, again depending on your translation, which is effectively just your like lizard and snake GF characters, right? And so that does make her kind of interesting, because as a single target art servant, the first thing that I thought of when I was looking at her kit was, oh, this would be a really neat servant for a multi-core setup where you need a single target servant and an AoE one, and she would work really nicely with Summer Ibuki, because Summer Ibuki, go figure, is a giant dragon lady. So she would love to have the additional 30% NP damage, and then Kurohime over here could take care of any just weird one enemy nodes that Ibuki would have a hard time looping against. So again, it kind of covers a lot of different bases. Whether you want to use her in a multi-core farming setup, or you just want to bring her to a challenge quest or some kind of boss fight, I mean, she's got survivability that is different from the things that Castoria is offering, because that is important so that you can stack them and you're not wasting anything. So you'll have the targeted invincibility, you'll have the solemn defense and evasion, while also providing stars for not just herself, but technically the entire party, and 15 every single turn for 3 turns is not bad. Like, that's not bad, especially if you're rocking another servant that also has stars every single turn, or you have something like a 20-30, you will have a pretty decent stock of stars while this skill is up. So already up to a really strong start with the first skill over here. Moving over to the second skill, Miraculous Hair A, which is just a goofy skill name, but I'm pretty sure I've seen goofier when it comes to FGO, but still weird nonetheless. It's going to be giving her a 30% quick and arts buff for 3 turns, giving her 30% crit damage for 3 turns, and similarly, if you are a Serpent/Lamia and or Dragon ally, you're getting 30% crit damage for 3 turns as well. So again, just good good stuff for herself, ensuring that she's getting that extra NP refund off of her Quicken Arts cards, extra damage off of those cards as well for 3 turns, while also giving herself a little bit of crit damage, not too much, but enough to kind of make an impact. And again, if you're bringing her with anybody, like say, I'm just going to use Summer Ibuki as a reference because arts characters that she synergizes really well with, they're also going to be getting that bonus. Also, just keep in mind for that Summer Ibuki does have the charisma herself. That's also really nice. And if you need to, you can always donate Summer Ibuki's second skill over to Kurohime over here. So that actually is working a little bit better than you might think. But anyway, looking at this skill, it's kind of just an offensive skill that anytime you want this to be up, you're just going to click it, have it up at all times, and it's just going to be generally very good, giving you more damage and allowing you to loot just a little bit easier. Moving on to her third skill, this is a little bit interesting because it does kind of play into her niche a little bit. So just going over the standard effects, she's gonna give herself 1 instance of debuff immunity for 3 turns. Again, very nice because Castoria can remove debuffs but can't prevent them from hitting your servant. So she can heal you from being stunned or charmed or burned or anything like that, but she can't stop it in the first place. So if you get stunned, you might kind of be stuck until you fire the NP, and then you've kind of wasted a turn. So this preemptively lets you get around some of those debuffs, which is very strong. It's not much, but it is a 1k heal every turn for 3 turns as well, which again, if you don't have somebody like Tamamo or Proto Merlin, your Castoria teams, where you're rocking 2 of them, you might have noticed, kind of have this inevitability built into them because you're not really healing ever. So even though you're not taking a whole lot of damage because you've got solemn defenses and invincibilities flying around all over the place, once you lose that HP, you don't really get it back unless you have command codes or something like this to keep you topped up. And then finally, she also has a 30% battery. Again, don't know why they went a little bit softer on both of their batteries, because not only does Kurohime only have a 30% battery, but so does Bisquion. She only has a 30% battery, and she's the premier 5-star, so I don't know why they're going a little bit softer on these ones. But hey, 30% battery is still a 30% battery. Remember, if you do the append skill, you could technically start off with 50%, which synergizes really well with a lot of different starting charge CEs or a double Castoria, because with both charismas, you get 60%, so you can auto-fire your NP without even needing the second skill from your Castoria. Then we have something a little bit interesting. So what they did for this skill is they decided to give it a taunt where you draw the attention of all serpent, lamia, or dragon enemies to yourself for 3 turns. So very nice if you're fighting, say, like an Ibuki boss or a Kurohime boss. And I know that some of those have AoE NPs, but you'll at least taunt all the normal attacks to yourself, which is very, very strong because it can help you keep your supports alive. But I wasn't exactly being fully honest when I said she only had a 30% battery, because she charges her own battery by an additional 10% depending on the number of serpent, lamia, or dragon allies or enemies on the field. So again, in that setup where you're going to be using her with, say, somebody like Summer Ibuki, she actually has a 40% battery, and God forbid there are any dragon or serpent enemies on the field, because then she'll be getting anywhere from an additional 10 to 30% extra battery, which actually does make this quite strong. And again, in some 90 plus or plus setups, I could see this being really useful, where you could just save this for, say, like a wave 2, or maybe the dragon enemies appear, and then you can get this massive battery. You know, it does kind of reward you for holding off on this skill, depending on what wave you want to fire it off on. Which is why it's a little tempting for me to maybe try to summon on this banner. I don't know with what Sankwarts I'm going to do it with, because I blew everything for Saber Altar, but hey, if I get something for a login or I bond somebody up, I mean, this is a very tempting servant to go for. With the only thing that's really holding me back from just busting everything down to try to get her is the fact that she is not limited and she is not story locked, which is kind of interesting in my opinion, because it does mean that on any future free SR tickets that we get, or really any future banner, she could just randomly pop in there. And looking at all 3 of these skills, that's not all that bad. I mean, that's pretty good. This is a very, very solid, strong unit that you can get just on any banner as you're pulling for the main servant that you want. Because even looking at her NP, she's got some strong effects over here. She gets around evasion, gets around defense, they proc first. She stacks an arts resistance down of 20% for 3 turns on the enemy, and then she has power mod against serpent or dragon enemies of 150% up to 200%. Keep in mind that somebody like Proto Merlin already gives you 1 overcharge stage for free from her charisma, so technically if you're using her with that servant, you get 162.5. I mean, that ain't bad. And normally I would say, well, dragon's an okay power power mod because there's a decent amount of servants and a decent amount of enemies, but then you start throwing in some of the lamia guys, your slimy lizards, all your reptile guys, then you start to get a decent pool of servants and just random enemies that you're going to encounter. Only thing really holding her back is that she is single target, so you're not going to break her out for farming all that frequently, but at the same time, there's a lot of 90 plus or plus nodes that are built in some weird way where there's like one large enemy in the middle, or you start off fighting one big enemy, and she's going to be really good for that. And her starting damage isn't actually the worst if we go and look at the damage chart over here. Sure, it's nothing too crazy, but it's still kinda respectable. Definitely could be worse for all the things that she's offering the party. And then if you can just find some dragon or lamia enemy, she's doing a really good chunk of damage. Like, she actually is hitting quite hard. And keep in mind, I mentioned at the very beginning, she has some synergy with somebody like George, because George can really just turn anybody into a dragon. And George himself is not that bad of a servant, offering stuff like taunt for himself and having the guts with the bond CE is also very nice as well. So that's actually not even the worst thing you could be doing. Instead of it being kind of like a gag thing that you could do with somebody like Siegfried, the fact that they're both art servants and would actually kind of fit into a team comp a little bit more efficiently doesn't make it all that bad. It's a little bit more gag. It's not like the best thing you could probably be doing, but it ain't bad. It's not the worst thing you can be doing. So overall, I mean, is this servant worth summoning for? I would say it's too early on in the year, especially since this is coming out, as she's released initially over here on JP. We don't have the 2-year foresight of, well, when this comes out in 2 years on NA to know what else is coming out this year, but I would say it's a little too early to just nut bust all over the place and drop all of your Saint Quartz on this servant, especially because she's not limited and again is not story locked or anything. So it's probably better to just save your Saint Quartz and see what comes out in the following months. Remember, around like April is whenever we usually get some kind of hype event. That's when we got CCC, that's when we got the Outgo event, it's when we're getting the arcade collab. We get all of our kind of hype collaboration-y things around April, and then that also kind of leads into anniversary, which leads into summer, and those servants are usually pretty bonkers. Those are usually the times that you want to just go ham Tara with all of your Saint Quartz, and when you're doing that, you have a decent chance of picking up this servant randomly on one of those banners. And so for me, where she sits is just one of those really good servants that you could pull on any banner. She kind of operates that same level as somebody like Hephaestion, right? Where Hephaestion, maybe you shouldn't be going balls deep on a banner to specifically get her, but she is a very nice surprise if you just randomly get her on the gacha, or somebody like Nidocris, although I would argue Nidocris might be a little bit more worth, especially if your account is a little bit more newer, but semantics. So I think she's really strong. I really like this servant. I just don't think she's necessarily worth just busting out the wallet and trying to get NP5 immediately, unless, of course, you're a really big fan of her design, which I can say I am a big fan of her design. So with that being said, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Again, if you found the video to be entertaining or informative, I would appreciate a like on the video and maybe even a little bit of a subscription to the channel. You can also peep our Discord, that is linked down in the description down below if you want to talk to me about FGO or other gacha games. I've also got my Twitch where I stream every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday starting at about 6 or 7 p.m. Central Time. I also dual stream over here on the YouTube, so just depending on which website you prefer, do you prefer watching on Twitch? Do you prefer watching on YouTube? I do it at both locations at the same time, so pick your preference with that one. And then finally, there's the Patreon down in the description down below, where if you want to, there are some videos over there that I've uploaded for patron exclusive, just for people that want to go that extra mile. In fact, we just released an exclusive patron tier list over there. I would like to start doing exclusive patron videos once a week at the very least, but the patrons just don't tell me what they want to see. I'm like, bro, you tell me to make something and I'll get out there and make it. That's the whole point of the Patreon. So with that as well, you also get access to a Discord exclusive chat in the server. So if you want to be like, hey ZTL, if no one's going to ask for this, put this up over there. And I'll be like, yes sir, you got it. I'll put that up there. So with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have such a nice day, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.